Vectors are the building blocks or nuts and bolts in R, as they form the basis for other complex objects such as matrices and data frames. Essentially, a vector is a collection of elements that are mostly made up of characters, logical, integers, or numeric. In other words, we say they are homogeneous. There are two types of vectors: atomic vectors and lists. Atomic vectors can exist in the following forms. Could be a double, integer, logical, character, complex, and raw. A list, we're going to review that in a separate video. So let's now answer the question, how to create a vector in R. Commonly or generally, we use the C function here to create a vector. So let's look at how to create a double or numeric. So the first thing we want to do, we use the C function. Then we insert our values here, real numbers, right? So separate by a comma and store it in an object or variable X. So let's create that. And we can use the print function to explicitly print it out. And we can see here in the console, right? So if we print that out, we can see we're able to see the output, okay? Other important functions you should be aware of, we can use the length, get the length of the vector. You can see 3, 1, 2, 3 elements. Then the class, object-oriented way of inspecting the vector tells us this is numeric. And then from an R perspective, the internal structure, how R looks at it, is type R double. So how do we create an integer? Same thing, you can use the C function, but we use the suffix L, which essentially means natural number. So we do that again, create that. You can see we've created 5, but when we check and examine the class, you can see it's an integer. Boolean or logical exist in 2 different states, true and false. Remember, it must be capital. These are reserved words, capital letter, right? True. So let's create an object that is of logical type. Create that, it's true, create false. If we check the class, you can see it's actually a data type called logical. Again, we know how to create characters. We use double quotation mark or single quotation mark. So we can create also using the C function, parentheses, right? And we separate that by a comma, right? Each time encapsulating that using double quotation. So here is a simple text that says, this is a text, right? And we can close the parentheses here. So remember, when you see this, it just gives us some specific information about our error. Do that, we're able to see the output, and we can see now that this is actually a character. So again, other functions you might need to know, checking the class type. So is character. So if I put here maybe orange, we can check that and see actually it's true, right? It's numeric, we can put a number, right? But also we can check the value of an object X, for example. You see this is false because we just created here an object that is a character, right? So the vector here, as long as it complies to the conventions of creating a vector, it will always be true, okay? Logical here, if we put true here, insert true, and actually it's true. If we put here a number, right, it will be false, okay? So other ways of creating a vector, we can use the colon, right? So essentially create 1 to 10, okay? We can also create from 2 to -2. You can see the output here in the console, okay? Lastly, we can create a vector using the sequence function, right? We're gonna look at this in a separate video, but basically what it means here, we pass this as arguments. So we're saying from, create a vector from 1 to 5, each time increment by 0.5, right? If we run that, you can see it's separated by an increment of 0.5. We can change this and say, okay, increment this by 2, but let's create this from 1 to 10. That means it will be an increment of 2, okay? Same thing here, we can create by length, right? You can say, you can choose from 1 to 2 and say, make sure we have a total length of 5. So R will figure out how to increment that. So in summary, we've looked at how to create an integer, create a double, we've created complex, logical, and character.